She thought he was just a hungry stray when she left out a bowl of food. But when the German Shepherd returned the next morning with something clutched in his jaws, Emma realized he wasn't looking for a meal. He was carrying a secret that would change her life forever. Emma had never thought of herself as lonely. She liked the quiet of her small farmhouse on the edge of town. She liked the creak of the porch boards in the evening, the way the wind rustled through the dry grass. But on that cold, rainy night, as she locked the front door and turned to look through the window, she felt something shift inside her. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks. A dark shape lingered at the edge of the trees, just beyond the reach of her porch light. She squinted, heart ticking faster, and then she saw the unmistakable outline of a dog, a big one. That the German Shepherd stood perfectly still, his coat soaked and glistening in the drizzle. His ears were pricked forward, and though she couldn't see them clearly, she felt his eyes locked on her, watching, waiting. That Emma's first instinct was caution. Stray dogs could be unpredictable, but something about the way he held himself, so proud, so patient, stirred a pang of sympathy. She turned back to the kitchen, scooped some leftover chicken into a bowl, and carried it slowly onto the porch. "It's okay, boy," she called softly, her voice low and steady. "You must be hungry." She set the bowl on the top step and backed away. For a long moment, the shepherd didn't move. The rain pattered around them in steady rhythm. Then, as if deciding he could trust her, he took one careful step forward. Emma watched from behind the screen door, her breath fogging the glass. The German Shepherd lowered his head and sniffed the bowl, his ribs faintly visible beneath his damp coat. Carefully, as though expecting the food to vanish, he licked at the chicken. Then he began to eat in earnest, swallowing each bite with quiet desperation. She felt something tug in her chest. The collar was still fastened around his neck, worn smooth with time. Whoever he belonged to, they weren't here now. When he finished, he lifted his head, meeting her gaze across the porch. For a heartbeat, she thought he might approach her. But just as quickly, he turned and trotted back into the darkness, disappearing among the trees as if he'd never been there at all. Emma waited a while longer, listening to the wind rattling the shutters, hoping he'd reappear. When it was clear he wouldn't, she picked up the empty bowl and carried it inside. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak and groan of the old farmhouse made her wonder if he was out there, huddled against the cold. When dawn finally broke, she hurried outside, scanning the yard for any sign he'd returned. There were no paw prints in the fresh mud, no flattened grass, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't gone far, and that he wasn't finished with her yet. Emma pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders as she stepped onto the porch. She half expected to see nothing but empty grass and puddles. Instead, her breath caught in her throat. There he was, sitting patiently at the bottom of the steps, as if he'd been waiting all night. His fur was still damp, but his eyes were bright and alert, fixed steadily on her. But that wasn't what made her heart race. Clenched gently between his teeth was a weathered leather satchel. Emma froze. She glanced up and down the lane, but no cars had passed. No sign of anyone who might have left it. She took a cautious step forward, her boots sinking into the wet ground. "Hey, boy," she said softly, her voice trembling. "What have you got there?" The shepherd shifted his weight, but didn't back away. Instead, he set the satchel carefully on the bottom step. Then he looked up, ears perked, as if expecting her to understand. Emma crouched, heart thumping, and reached for the strap. The leather was stiff with age, the brass buckle tarnished. She glanced at the dog, searching his gaze for some clue to the story she was about to uncover. Slowly, she unfastened the buckle. Inside were several folded papers, a bundle of photographs, and something that glimmered faintly in the pale light. A badge. Emma swallowed hard. Whatever this dog had brought her wasn't random. It was a message, a piece of a life he couldn't explain any other way. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she understood he had come to her for help. Emma's fingers trembled as she lifted the badge from the satchel. It was heavier than she expected, cool against her palm. The engraving was worn but still legible. K9 Unit, Officer Mark Harlan. She felt a chill ripple down her spine. The dog watched her with unblinking eyes, as if waiting for her to piece everything together. She set the badge aside and unfolded the stack of papers. They were letters, yellowed and smudged with damp, each written in a neat hand. She began to read the first one aloud, her voice catching to "Oh, whoever finds Max, please take care of him. He's more than a partner. He's family. If you're reading this, I'm sorry. I tried to get back to him, but sometimes life doesn't give us the chance." Her throat tightened, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. She looked at the shepherd, Max, and saw the way his ears twitched at his name. "Oh, Max," she whispered. Gingerly, she flipped through the photographs, a younger Max sitting proudly beside a smiling man in uniform. The two of them crouched together by a patrol car, a Christmas picture with Max wearing a red scarf. Each image told a story of loyalty and love. In the last photo, the officer was hugging Max, eyes closed, as if trying to memorize every detail. On the back, a single line was scrawled in faded ink. "No matter what happens, you'll always be my good boy." Emma's tears fell freely now. She understood why Max had come. He hadn't just been looking for food. He had been searching for someone. To see him, to remember where he came from. And in that moment, she knew she couldn't let him be alone anymore. Emma spent the rest of the morning making phone calls, her heart aching with every retelling of what she'd found. The local police station confirmed that Officer Mark Harlan had passed away in the line of duty nearly a year before. Max had been declared missing soon after, presumed lost or worse, but he hadn't disappeared. He had been out there, searching for a piece of home he could still hold on to. When she ended the last call, Emma looked through the window at Max, who was curled in a tight ball on the porch, his head resting on the worn satchel. As if sensing her gaze, he lifted his eyes, and in that look was something so heartbreakingly patient it made her chest tighten. That evening, she stepped outside with a fresh bowl of food and a blanket folded over one arm. Max lifted his head, ears flicking forward. She sat on the top step, placing the food nearby, but making no move to touch him. She knew trust wasn't given in a single night. It had to be earned. "It's okay," she whispered, voice soft. "You don't have to run anymore." Minutes passed in silence. Then, slowly Max rose. He walked to her side, his paws nearly silent on the wood. With a quiet sigh, he lowered himself onto the blanket. Emma didn't dare move at first, but when he pressed his head gently against her knee, she reached out and rested her hand on his neck. "Stay as long as you want," she said, her voice breaking. "You're safe here." And for the first time since she'd seen him, Max closed his eyes and slept without fear. Weeks later, the farmhouse felt different, warmer, somehow, as if Max's quiet presence had filled all the empty spaces Emma hadn't realized were there. He followed her from room to room, his paws tapping softly against the worn floors at night. He slept by the fireplace, the old leather satchel tucked safely beside him. One evening, Emma knelt beside him, pressing her hand to his chest. "You're home now," she whispered, and Max thumped his tail, as if he understood every word.